Suicide Squad is the latest movie in the DCEU and follows the US intelligence officer Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis, as she assembles a team of the most dangerous and incarcerated supervillains for a top secret mission. With the likes of Deadshot, played by Will Smith, and Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, these villains must unite and battle a mysterious and powerful entity. Okay, so Suicide Squad was getting a ton of hate before this movie even came out, and I try not to let that knock me down at all. To be honest, I didn't even have that much high expectations going into the movie, so I was like, you know, fuck it, I'll just enjoy the movie, let's have some fun. Like, you know what, let's just watch the movie. I'm not expecting too much, you know, so it should be decent. I'm gonna say this right now, because this is what I thought on the movie. If you guys like seriously love this movie and you think it's a 10 out of 10, good on you. If you really hate this movie, think it's like abysmal and it's a 0 out of 10, you know what, good for you. I believe all film is subjective, so if you like really hate this movie or not, I'm gonna go ahead and give you my thoughts and review on this movie. And while I'll admit, amidst everything going on, I did have a little bit of fun. I just wasn't a fan of this movie. Alright, so let's run through some of the good stuff. I liked Will Smith as Deadshot. I thought he did a solid job. I was a little apprehensive at first because I'm like, okay, it's Will Smith. Hopefully they don't make the whole focal point of the movie on him. And while it does feel like it does focus on him a lot of the times in the movie, it's not a bad thing. Deadshot was one of the best parts of the movie. He was funny when he needed to be. He had some of the best action beats in my opinion. From the scenes that I did enjoy in this movie, they were mostly from him and they were fun and they looked dope. For example, Deadshot wiping out a ton of people. Awesome. Some of Deadshot's backstory with his daughter. Awesome. But not all of it. On to some other things that I genuinely did enjoy in this movie. The Flash cameo. I thought that was awesome. It was nice just watching this movie and then randomly seeing some DCEU stuff thrown into the mix that worked well and didn't feel awkward or forced. Another thing that I did enjoy in Suicide Squad was the laughs. The humor works well, and although some of it didn't, it does for the most part. And at part, Suicide Squad is fun. Me and my buddies have a joke where like, Suicide Squad isn't fun. It's fun! And honestly, that's how this movie feels to me, from the promotion to the actual movie. It's almost like the filmmakers are kind of pushing onto the audience like, this movie's fun, right? Yeah, okay, this movie's fun, yeah, okay. Most of the cast did a solid job with what they had. Harley Quinn, for the most part, I thought she did an awesome job too. I have a little more to say about Harley Quinn, but I'll talk about that a little later on. And the last thing that comes to mind about this movie that I did like was probably El Diablo. He was probably the next most interesting character because of his power set and his backstory with his family. He probably had the most characterization apart from Deadshot in the movie, and objectively, he had a cool fight scene in the movie, but at that point, it was just downhill for me. Alright, now on to some of the things that I think didn't work in this movie. This movie is a hot mess. From the narrative to the pacing to the editing, it's just not very good. So right from the beginning of this movie, they choose to spend about 20 minutes or so introducing these characters, also through flashbacks that didn't work more than they do. It just felt odd, and there definitely could have been a better way at introducing and showing these characters, instead of it just kind of feeling like, yeah, these are the characters, and they're in the movie. Here's a lot about them. Yep. With regards to the Joker, I was not the biggest fan of him in this movie. I thought he did a decent job at about half of the scenes he was in, but the other half, I thought he was trying too hard, and I didn't like the way that they handled his character, nor the amount of time that he was actually in it. The way they promoted him in that like second trailer, they made it seem like he was the antagonist of the film. You can already tell that they cut around him heavily, with Jared Leto even himself saying they filmed enough scenes for him to make an entire Joker movie. What? Honestly, the Joker didn't really need to be in this, especially with the actual amount of time that he had in it. The movie's villain plot in this thing is just awful. I don't even know if I can call it a villain plot without using like air quotes, because it was just so bad. Literally, the idea of how the villain came to be, how abrupt it was, and just to the ending of it, it was just all... no. Touching upon some of the actual characters on the Suicide Squad team, some of them were severely underused. From Killer Croc to Katana, I will give them credit where it's due, because out of everyone, they were probably the only characters that were like ripped right out of the comic and stuck true to their characters, but the way that they handled them wasn't treated in the same manner. Katana is useless in this movie. She didn't have to be there. She literally has a FaceTime phone call with an object, and that's about her most significance in this movie. She has a cool sword, and you would think they would build it up to use it for some sort of significance to like defeat the villain or something, right? Nope. On Killer Croc, he had nearly 4 lines in this whole movie. They legit just sidelined one of the most interesting characters on the team to being the guy in the background who's just kind of like, oh yeah, B.E.T. Another thing that I noticed in this movie, and it comes back to the whole editing and pacing issues, literally for the first hour or so in this movie, there isn't a scene for more than a minute or two where characters are just speaking to one another and being developed, legit. And this is because the movie works at an odd pace with its story, and there's just flashbacks randomly interjected. Touching on the score and soundtrack on Suicide Squad, I was kind of split on it. Sometimes it works, but it doesn't. And this is because the individual songs sound good, but the songs don't feel right in the movie, and they feel overbearing, and it's just like a music video of some sort. I've had time to think about this, and I'll tell you right now, the last 30 minutes of this movie went full-blown fan-4 And this is because the movie is legitimately just like 20 minutes of introducing these characters, and then bam, it's like the third act, and you have like an hour left of the movie. Like wormhole in the sky, like save the day shit. But with regards to the last 30 minutes or so and the ending of this movie, it was abysmal. It just went to complete shit with the villain, and it was just a mess. Even visually, it was just like, what? I know they did a ton of reshoots for this movie, and you can clearly tell it's for the end of it because just so much stuff going on. It looks like a mess. Rick Flagg's hair is different. Like, they didn't even bother to fix that. This movie is by the numbers and generic, and although it is cool seeing these villains beating up a bunch of people, it's just mindless drones that are people but really aren't people, so they can get across with a PG rating, and it shows them looking cool beating them up, but it's for about 2 minutes or so because then you think, oh my god, wait a minute, this story is stupid. Again, as the movie progresses, it just starts skydiving for me. The dialogue at points is fairly cringy, the action becomes mediocre, and overall this movie is just a mess and disappointing. Legit, there's lines in the movie like, what are we, some type of Suicide Squad? And in addition to this, not a spoiler because we've seen it from the trailers, Batman is in this movie. After I came out of this movie, I honestly thought about it. The way that they handled Batman and utilized him in Suicide Squad, it made me like him less. It just felt awkward and was done weird, making him seem almost goofy, to be completely honest. Viola Davis did a good job in this movie, but at times, her decisions and actions that she makes in the movie doesn't make sense. There is this one scene in particular, I don't know why. I don't know, like, it was just meant to make her seem cool, or like seem like, oh my god, don't mess with her. They really go a far length in this movie to make her seem worse than these villains who are murderers, who have freaking like crazy powers, they eat people. And they try to make them seem like the good people and make her seem bad, when it's like, dude, they're fucking villains. You work for the government. Another thing is this movie feels like a video game. Call of Duty Zombies, to be exact, literally after the introduction and we get into this weird like third act for like an hour or whatever, it's just like grinding from like one level to the next because it's just mindless waves of people that they fight, and then it becomes boring and it struggles to remain entertaining. I didn't like the motivation of Rick Flag or his character all too much. They kind of just expect you to believe that he's in love with this girl with little to no explanation or solid amount of time to believe that. Like, dude, she's a fucking witch. What? As well, I mentioned that I liked Harley Quinn, and I honestly did. However, towards the end and certain things she does made me like her a little less by the end of the movie, although I did still like her as a whole. There's also this thing where she kept referring to the squad as her family. What? Fam, you're with these people for one night. It's not that these villains can't have a family or you can make a bond with them, but their loyalty to one another made no sense given the little amount of time they shared together. Seriously, a character could have killed another character off, but they didn't, and it didn't make sense. To me, it seemed evident that this movie at parts tried to hit the Guardians of the Galaxy heartfelt note and try to capitalize on that Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool wave, but it falls in between and doesn't work. And time back into the chemistry and how the movie's pacing feels off, you know what they should have done that would have made much more sense? At least in my opinion, which is go on a mission prior to the big fight that they do in this movie, so we see these individuals have a test run with each other on a much smaller scale mission. Possibly fail and develop these characters and get to know each other a little bit more. Then when we get to the big fight scene and they call each other family and all this other stuff, it makes more sense and natural. It could have even went to somewhere like Arkham to do something revolving around the Joker, and then they could have tied in Batman, and it could have made those two have a better reason for both being in the film. But if I had to guess, they might be saving something like that for the solo Batman movie. I found it shocking how bad this movie was because I wasn't particularly hyped for it, and I had low expectations going in, and it still wasn't great. But looking over some things, you can still have a bit of fun with this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and give Suicide Squad a 5.5 out of 10. Jeez, that was probably a longer review than usual. There's just a lot of things that I wanted to say. And my bad, guys, I've been getting a ton of messages saying like, yo, where's your Suicide Squad review? Here it is. I'll try to be like on time next time. That is my Suicide Squad review, guys. What did you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Are you one of the people who really enjoyed this movie? Did you absolutely hate it? Let me know. Anyway, that's my movie review of Suicide Squad. The next movie review should be either Pete's Dragon or Sausage Party or War Dogs. One of those, whichever I see first. Anyway, I'll see you next time.